My name is Austin Steinbart. I'm a 29-year-old DIA agent from Chandler, Arizona. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll see that I've been having a pretty wild time out here in Westworld working on this QAnon project. QAnon is a military intelligence operation, the first of its kind. One that uses space-age quantum technology to post messages from the future to internet forums in the present. It's kind of like that movie The Frequency with Dennis Quaid, except with a quantum computer. The main characters in this story are President Trump, Admiral Rogers, General Flynn, the DIA, myself, and Q+, the future commander of the Future Space Force, augmenting himself with time-warping artificial intelligence, and running point on this whole thing. Messages on the board serve several purposes. The first one is providing the public with a behind-the-curtains look at a live spy operation that is currently in progress. The second is to give me, personally, Baby Q, hints as I complete this little nightmare scavenger hunt from hell that I've been on. Over the course of this mission, I've infiltrated hotels, data centers, top-secret document warehouses, and military bases. So some of the gobbledygook posted on those boards are actually direct messages to me personally containing hints for things I happen to be dealing with at a given time. Kind of like a giant live-action escape room sort of a deal if you've ever been to one of those things.
Posted a manifesto that was linked to one of the bombers on the 8chan forum. You know, just someone put up a manifesto there, nothing to do with what 8chan is all about. But yet 8chan got targeted, and the major internet service Cloudflare pulled it from its service, and then the other cloud hosting services did the same thing. So, you know, if QAnon was a sham, it's like, well, why is it that the mainstream media and the deep state is going after it with such vengeance? It's, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire, and I think it's because there's fire, there's truth there. QAnon is the real deal. You do have a group of military intelligence people working with the Trump administration. They're putting out a lot of stuff. They're using advanced technologies like Looking Glass, and this isn't something I've been able to prove, but I think there is an extraterrestrial element to Q as well.
I agree. But
yeah, so that's why, yeah, it's the real deal.
But I didn't mean to interrupt you, Michael. And sometimes I hate to jump out of in front of that moving train, you know, because sometimes you get on a roll, but our time's limited. And for the final question, Michael, do you think that, I've also asked you this before, but just for the new audience, do you think that Q will ever come forward to show his or her or their face?
I doubt it. I think QAnon is military intelligence. And people who work in the military intelligence community, they're mission specific. They've got a mission. And the mission of QAnon is to kind of like expose the deep state, protect Trump from the deep state, and reveal a lot of suppressed truths. So they're mission specific. Those are the things that QAnon is trying to do. And once they achieve those mission goals, QAnon, like any good military intelligence operative, will just disappear. You'll never know who it was. And they take pride in doing that because, you know, they don't want to advertise. You know, they're not about getting public kudos or anything. At the end of the day, you know, in 10 years' time, we'll probably be looking at this period in our history and say, well, you know, remember when how the QAnon movement was sparked and led to this kind of planetary revolution where the truth was revealed. We found out all about the deep state, the cover-up of 9/11, the exposure of extraterrestrial secrets, and all of the suppressed alien technologies that revolutionized the planet. In 10 years' time, we'll be talking about that stuff.
It's all about a game. It's being able to predict how the other will react. I mean, what are the odds that we already know how they were going to react to everything? Now that's because game theory, or the more fancy way to say it is predictive analytics, or fancy math, or time machine, or whatever, right?
here in the country, you have military operations that are taking place with the same types of considerations and intelligence gathering operations where people are having to make very hard decisions, including political operations, where you don't want to give away the farm. You're aware of who you're dealing with in reality and what their objectives are, but it's not time to pull the pin yet because so many things are interrelated. You mentioned the Q operation. That's being managed and coordinated. All of the details are being managed and coordinated, not by just a person or a couple of people sitting around the desk. What do you think about this or that? They're using supercomputers to gauge in time and sift the information to come up with precise timing. This is not a backyard operation. And so those decisions are not seat of the pants, whimsical, arbitrary. There's a lot going into those decisions because it is a military operation, period.
How far ahead it is. Because, for example, let's not talk Q. For example, I was talking about Venezuela, right? Before it was even on the radar. How did I know? People were like, why are you talking about it? I said that General Flynn would never be sentenced, and everyone, even Jack Posobiec was like, he's going to be sentenced. It's over. There's a sentence.
Well, we're going to finish up here.
Q it stands for quantum, right?
Right.
So let's just leave it at that. There's a lot of technology, like the president has told us, that we have no idea exists. So if it's not bad, why knock it? It's causing no harm. And all of
should overturn everything else. I mean, from my point of view, it seems like the case. And I'm just curious what you think is going to transpire there, because, or is it even going to be decided between now and say the 6th of January? Will it come in soon enough?
One of the key things here is, of course, and you know, Q, the Q movement. Q stands for quantum, and there are 3 countries in the world that have back-engineered or gifted technologies. And a super aluminum computer or a quantum computer. Alice is as you would imagine, Alice going down the rabbit hole, is a quantum computer. And these computers don't think like a chess game. They don't say, okay, well, if I do this, what are my opponent's options? So my opponent might do this or this. What could I do to that? That's a normal supercomputer in the sense that it would do it quicker. What I'm talking about with the Alice is that the supercomputer is the wrong term for that. It's a quantum super light speed computer. And what that does is it says, this is what the other side will do. Not, these are the options of the other side. This is what they will do. And then you can ask the machine, because it is a machine, although it is semi-aware, it's got a sort of a life to itself. And then you can say, okay, well, if we do this, what will the opponent do? And again, it will tell you this is exactly what they will do. Now, this can see absolutely accurately 6 months ahead. And then we've got a 2 year to 2.5 year after that, where it's about 50% right. But human beings are so unpredictable that what will happen is that the machine, its ability to see beyond that falls off. So there are 3 countries in the world that have a quantum computer, but the Americans have the most advanced or the most capable machine. And it's not run by the NSA, which I think is very interesting, although the NSA have a connection to it. So before we talk about, you know, the other bits, these machines are the ones that are plotting the actions, and that is why the Q movement, have been able to say things 2, 3, or 4 years ago, which are now coming to fruition, or at least aspects of it are now being proven. And if we don't accept that there is a gypsy with a crystal ball, somehow divining the future, not impossible, but if we assume that it's a back-engineered piece of tech, that is capable of doing that, then the bad guys were always in a trap. From the very moment that President Trump came down that escalator, the bad guys were already in a trap. So I wanted just to say that about the computers. There's two other computers that are not mentioned in this, but are mentioned in the original briefing document, additional to the Kraken team using their own one. But the point is that there are so many options within the Constitution, within executive orders, that we shouldn't just see one aspect roll out. There may be 4 or 5 of these options all actioned at the same time, Kerry.
Sure, but still, I do have a focus on Sidney Powell and her case.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I completely forgot. Yes. Well, she's only one of 2 who are allowed and qualified to lead in courts martials. And that is why she was, do you remember that nonsense where, she was appeared to be removed from the Trump team?
Yes.
That was simply because she's a military lawyer, and she is going to be working on the military aspect.
Because I had an idea of what he was up against, this global cabal. And I didn't realize how many more people were aware of it at that point. But I started listening and following, and this is when I started hearing people talk about this Q thing. And I'm like, what the heck, the Q thing, And that's when I started looking into it. I think it was like December or January. And I was thinking, this is too perfect. How do they know this stuff? I was suspicious because I'm like, how are they getting these people to cooperate? They have to be getting these people to cooperate. How do they know what they're going to do? They can't know that. So therefore, they must be getting their cooperation. So, and they kept talking, well, it's a movie, it's a game, it's a show. No, they didn't say it's a game. It's a movie, it's a show, get your popcorn. And I'm like, they're all on the same team and they're playing all of us, was a thought I had. But Trump doesn't strike me that way. In my gut, I'm saying that's not a right assessment. What am I missing? This thing about being able to see into the future, which I was reading as they have to have it planned because they're cooperating. And this morning, someone told me about Project Looking Glass. And so I went and I listened to the video. And it hit me, it was like a dam breaking. It was like a watershed. I had an epiphany. It was a revelation for me. I don't know how many other colloquialisms I can use to explain the magnitude with which this hit me, because plain and simple, this is the reality, folks. If you listen to this video, those converging timelines take us to the Great Awakening. They take us to ascension. They take us to humanity rising to a level of enlightenment that we cannot relate to. And you guys, depending on your belief system, might call it transcendence, you might call it the revelation, the end of the Bible. Just depending on your perspective of where you're coming from, it's been predicted. You've heard of it before. This Project Looking Glass is saying this is where we're headed.
One of the caveats that I do have some personal information that I did get personally involved in was some information that had to do with the Stargates and Looking Glass, and more specifically the 2012 problem with those projects. I guess, popular opinion of what's out there right now is that the project was shut down because there was a problem when we approached 2012. I've heard it described a number of ways, but to my knowledge, the problem is that the timelines converge on that point in time. And when you know enough about the Stargate projects and the Looking Glass project to know that how string theory works and how the possibility of possibilities works and how making one choice over here doesn't necessarily mean that the other choice couldn't exist at the same time. But once you get your brain wrapped around this subject, you find out that at the end of 2012, in an easy way to put it, the choices that we make become less and less consequential to the future. And eventually we're pushed into this bottleneck of time, no matter which choice we make. And that's important to the people that had access to Looking Glass because they would use Looking Glass knowing the choices that they would make and the future would pop up. The big mistake was coming up with the possibility of future. And when we started using a computer to say, well, if we make this choice, it's 79% possible that this scenario happens, and 23% are possible, or whatever, you know, I'm using round numbers, that this scenario would happen. The understanding at the time was that was realistic. However, if you go down the road further and free will continues to exercise itself on this game, that 79% possibility sometimes changes very, very fast. But if you look at the situation in a point of time, it seems very realistic that that's the greatest possibility. What happened was people, very smart people, began to figure out that something big was coming up. Something that made it so all the possibilities of all the future scenarios of any choice, any possibility that was fed in and observed through the Looking Glass inherently ended up in the same future. And no decision, no possibility changed past a certain point. That's the big secret.
Okay, so is that certainly 2012 in your understanding?
It well coincides with December 21st, 2012.
So at that point, all possibilities lead to the same
timelines.
Rubicon.
All possible timelines lead to the same basic set of history in the future.
And what is that history to you? Did you know that, or did you find that out?
That is the big question. That is the big secret. That is what sends everybody that has all of the information, that knows everything, into a blind panic. The people that know everything about Looking Glass, that have gotten all the reports and all the information, the elites of the world, probably figured out that that was the end of the game, and nothing could be manipulated beyond that point.
So do you think that's held true? In other words, well, I have about 60 questions, but do you think that's true or holding true, that nothing could be manipulated, that they haven't found a way to manipulate, that that's still the case? I mean, this is knowledge that you would have gained back when?
Back when I was in the military, it would have been before '97 when I got in trouble. And it was things that one of my particular areas that I was amazingly intuitive about is problem solving / mission planning, or more specifically, taking a bad mission and fixing it, getting
So-
everybody through and out of it.
Troubleshooting an optimum future.
Exactly. Certainly knowing how string theory and possible futures works makes it so you can work your mind very quickly to see the reality of what's happening and decide what decisions need to be made to change it for a particular outcome.
Okay, but at a certain point you said that even the powers that be, so to speak, realized that having even abilities such as yourself, you're talking about, which they, in theory, had even using a computer or a looking glass.
Right, they had to use a computer to do it.
Right. So in essence, but at a certain point, it's still an end game. It's still, they cannot go beyond a certain point.
At a certain point, after they're done hearing the computer tell them, this is what's going to happen over and over and over and over again, all they become focused on is, how do we fix it?
Why? What is this that's going to happen?
The
You know that?
inevitable contraction of the timelines.
But what does that mean for this reality? Do you know that?
I don't know that. What I do know is that I was called in and asked to solve this problem, this timeline contraction problem. And I eventually did my due diligence and did all the investigating and basically only had one piece of information, and that was reinforcement. The computer's right. The timelines will contract down to some inevitable thing that you guys won't tell me about, so I can't help you.
But what you're basically, you came back with was, it is inevitable, whatever it is.
There is an inevitable event. It's been forecast, it's been predicted, it's been fed to us in a slop trough of what they want us to believe will happen.
But they don't
However,
know.
they don't actually have control over what happens. They only have control over the reaction, and it seems that no matter what they try to do to cause their desired reaction, it's going to have an opposite effect.
Interesting.
Now, it's much, much easier for me to explain today what that process is as opposed to back then. But if I had to give it a name, I would say it's the awakening process. It's an evolution of consciousness that cannot, will not, and no matter what decisions or possibilities are injected into the equation, eventually it all resolves down to us all learning the truth and becoming aware of this massive dam of lies that has been built that keep us from knowing massive volume of information that we should otherwise possess.
Okay. Well, that's very, very monumental to be told that from a person in your perspective, who's had your background and your exposure. Is it your understanding that the notion that Looking Glass has been, that there are various looking glasses around the globe supposedly, that according to Dan Burish were shut down. Is it your understanding they're actually not shut down?
I believe that they're shut down because they are all saying the same thing, and they're completely useless at this point.
Is what you're saying.
Right. It's like the Wicked Witch, looking into the magic mirror and always getting the same answer. Well, if you were always getting the exact opposite of the answer that you wanted, you'd stop talking to the mirror. And that's essentially what happened with Looking Glass, is not only did they not want people to use it anymore because they knew it was just going to burp out the same thing, but at the same time they didn't want anybody else to know what it was saying.
us the Looking Glass project in Hollywood, whether you know it or not. Now, if you remember back to some of my earlier pictures I showed you of the Looking Glass device that Dan Burish had helped artists make, like these, then it won't be a surprise to you when you see the movie Contact and you see the device that was presented in that movie to us. It is very similar in many ways. And so it shows how they reveal things to us. I mentioned that the Satanists, they, by a law that exists in the spiritual universe, they must reveal their plans concerning people. And so they must show us these things in these movies, and they do it in this secret kind of way, this way that seems like that we would dismiss, but they at least are showing it to us, so that it's almost as if they're asking our permission before they do all these things, because they're trying to fulfill that spiritual law in regards to having to divulge their evil practices. But here's a clip from the movie Contact
80%.
that shows you exactly how this device kind of looks and acts. And it's very similar to the real Looking Glass device, although the real one is obviously very small compared to this.
Okay to go! 85%.
All bearing tips are on the profile.
90%. We're detecting some structural instability.
Confirmed. Is she whole?
We're within limits. Barely.
I'm okay to go! I'm okay to go!
My God.
100% target velocity.
Steve, picking up tremendous EMI levels around the machine. All field measurements are pegged off scale high.
Steve, we're approaching our abort limits.
Okay, go!
I hear her. I hear her.
Alright, so that just shows you a little bit there of what their representation of the Looking Glass is in the movie Contact with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey. Here is a animation I found somebody made online. They remodeled it in 3D and wanted to show it, but that lets you at least see it a little better. Then another movie that actually kind of reveals this thing to us is the movie Paycheck with Ben Affleck, if you've ever seen that. And at the kind of end game of this movie has to do with a future revealing device, a computer that shows people the future. Here's that clip. But you can see there, it's the same kind of thought, the same kind of technology looking. It uses this idea of a gas or some xenon mist or something, argon, whatever it is, to activate this device that lets them peer into the future. And just to give you a little more, there are other drawings that Dan Burish, again, has done with artists. These drawings I'm about to show you were with a guy named Michael Schratt. He put these CAD drawings together of what Project Looking Glass would actually look like in real life. And so it just gives you an idea, more detailed, of what that device looks like. And this schematic is not only of the device sits in the kind of left of center there in this room, and it's a schematic of one floor of the base S4 that Bob Lazar had actually mentioned working in. And this was where these guys testified that the Project Looking Glass device resided, at least one of them, at the one that exists here in the United States at area S4, base S4. Here is that with these items highlighted. Now the reason these are highlighted is you'll notice it's called Alice's floor, and there's a white rabbit. Now, if you are a follower of Q and the Q posts, the QAnon posts, then you know that he has mentioned Alice in Wonderland many times throughout his posts. He also has mentioned, Q has mentioned Project Looking Glass in one post. And there are plenty of places you can go to see those posts. I'll let you do that on your own, but just note that those references likely have multiple meanings and most likely reference not only other things, but also Project Looking Glass, and the fact that Q, being one of the white hats, and you remember Bill Wood mentioned in his testimony that he worked with a group of white hats he called the Oath Keepers. I truly believe that these guys are connected to the Q group in some way, or at least are may not be the Q group, but are in contact with them, because they seem to all have knowledge of this looking glass device and have been trying to use it to find a way to protect people during this situation where there's going to be this convergence of timelines. And they are obviously working towards the good timeline, where there is a awakening, where people learn the truth about their world and about all the things that have been hidden from us from decades and centuries past by the power-controlling elites who have run the world for so long. And so I just wanted to compile all these things. That's really the end of all the slides and pictures and videos. That's the last one I have for you, but thank you for your time in this. I think that this is probably one of the best compilations of the Looking Glass material from the actual whistleblowers that you're going to find online. So I encourage you, share this with your friends. Like the video on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and tweet this and just get the word out so that people start understanding what's going on. Because I think the more people that understand and know, that just is going to increase this great awakening that's already occurring, and it is going to be good for us. It is going to be good for America. It's going to be good for the world. And so thank you for your time, and take care of yourselves.